And how do you miss 2 of every species in the entire world loading onto the biggest boat that anyone has ever made with their bare hands ever? And so what he means, he doesn't mean that they can't physically see it. He doesn't mean that they don't know that he's building it. He's saying that they're doing everything they're doing every day. They're getting married, they're giving people in marriage, they're working, they're eating, they're drinking, they're enjoying life, they're doing everything that normal people do every day. You guys get up, you go to school, well, not right now, but you get up, you come in here, you go to the pool, you do your everyday stuff, right? But it says that they were apathetic is what it means when it says they knew nothing. They didn't care about the message that God was sending through Noah. Noah used his time building the ark to preach, but the Bible says that the people didn't care. They still did everything. They were thinking that basically their life was going to go on. And they walked by Noah, they rolled their eyes at him, they ignored what he was saying, they mocked him, they made fun of him, they told him he was crazy. How many of you guys have seen, it's not Bruce Almighty, is it Evan Almighty? Mm-hmm. Evan Almighty? And like, Bruce Almighty is the first one. Yes. But they mocked him, like they made fun of him, they rolled their eyes, and the whole time they're doing this, they refused to acknowledge that God could possibly be sending them a message. They refused to heed a warning that was telling them that the earth is about to be destroyed. Like every one of y'all, there is no one safe from this. And so they weren't receptive, basically, to the spiritual message. You can be receptive to something physically, and you can know it's there, but you can't be receptive sometimes to things that are there spiritually, to what the physical thing is trying to represent. So it says that they were spiritually asleep, basically. They were unaware. And because they were asleep, because they were unaware of what was going to happen, every one of them, except for Noah's family and the animals he loaded with him, died. They paid for it with their lives. But even more than paying for it with their lives, they paid for it with their souls. Not one of those people went to heaven. Not one of them. Not only did they perish physically, but every one of them will never, ever see the pearly gates, I guess you could say. They'll never stand face to face with God. They will never be able to spend their eternity worshiping him. They forfeited their souls because they decided that they would rather sleep through a message than stand up and do something. And so this passage also says, though, if you look in verse 37, it says, "As it was in the days of Noah, so it will be at the coming of the Son of Man." The thing is that the world has a really good way of saying like how much worse Earth is now, right, than it used to be 50 years ago. Have you heard your grandparents say that? Like how awful today's generation is compared to theirs. That's not true. Sin doesn't change ever. Sin is in the same way that God is forever, sin is forever. It's constant, it doesn't change. And the Bible says that as it was in the days of Noah, so it will be. So it is today. And so if you go on to Romans, in verse 42, first of all, it goes on to say that, "Therefore keep watch, because you do not know on what day your Lord will come." The word watch in this verse, I looked it up. I like to look up like the original word they use, and I don't remember if it was Greek or Hebrew, but it actually means to be vigilant and awake. And so the enemy has fed a lie to especially Christians. He knows that he'll never be able to convince us that heaven and hell are fake. He'll never be able to do that. Once you've been saved, you will never be able to convince us that there's not a heaven and a hell. You'll never, ever be able to convince us that Christ isn't coming back. He knows that, right? Because he knows the Bible better than we do, and he knows that once we're saved, our lives are God's. But what he has convinced us of, what he has been able to feed us, is that we have time. And so he convinces us that God's not coming back today. He hasn't come back for 2,000 years, right? He's not coming back tomorrow. You have time. You have time to grow up. You have time to enjoy middle school. You have time to enjoy high school. But you don't really need to serve God right now. You can do it in 10 days. You can do it in 15 years. You can do it kind of whenever you get around to it. And that's an even worse lie than convincing somebody that there is no God, because that's an excuse. Not believing in God is a viable excuse for why you don't do God's work. But if you believe in God and the only thing that you're counting on is that you have time to do his work, you don't have to do it today, what happens when you run out of time and then you stand in front of Jesus and he asks you what you did with the gifts that he's given you, right? And so the belief that we have time, that he's not coming back, that, I mean, if you can read in here, and we're in the end times. It may not happen in your lifetime. It may not. It may be another 1,000 years. God doesn't record time the way that we record time, but we are getting there. We're seeing things in the Bible come to fruition that generations before us would have never imagined possible. And so the lie that the enemy has fed us, that we have time, that he's not coming back, it's not true. And couldn't be more wrong. In Romans 13, 11 through 12, that'll be the biggest passage that we actually focus on today, is Romans 13, 11 through 14. And it says that the hour has already come. It says, hour has already come for you to wake up from your slumber, because our salvation is nearer now than when we first believed. The night is nearly over and the day is almost here. It says already. The hour has already come. That means that we're late. Every one of us. This already is a past tense adverb. It means that you missed your alarm, basically. Your alarm has already gone off, and Derek likes to hit the snooze button 3 times. He says 3 snooze alarms. I hate it. I hate it, I hate it, I hate it with a fiery passion. Because this verse says basically that your alarm has gone off and you've hit the snooze button. The time has already come for you to wake up from your slumber. And it means that the devil has already taken ground. He has already occupied, and to occupy means to seize with force. He has already occupied territory that we are supposed to have, that should belong to us. You know, when you sleep, you're unconscious, right? Like, you have no idea what's happening around you. How many of you guys go to sleep and you think, like, oh, I'm going to get a good, 8 hours, and then you wake up, 5 seconds later, but it's been, the full 8 hours. But you really feel like you just closed your eyes. You guys don't? That'll happen when you get older, I promise. That happens to me all the time. You literally think, you're going to get a good night's sleep, and it feels like you open your eyes, and it's already morning time. You have no concept of time passing. You have no concept of awareness. There's nothing, everything passes through your mind. And so you're indifferent. You're indifferent to what happens around you when you sleep. So the Bible is telling us that while we slept, our alarm has gone off and we're late. And so 1 Thessalonians 5:6, I don't remember if I put it in here, but it just says, so then let us not be like others who are asleep, but let us be awake and sober. So what does it mean when the Bible tells us to be awake? What does it look like for us to wake up? The definition of awake, if you look it up in the dictionary, says to become aware of, to come to a realization of, to make or become active again. And that's the piece that I want to focus on, is to become active again. So I'm going to read the rest of Romans 11 through 14. And it says, and do this understanding the present time. The hour has already come for you to wake up from your slumber, because our salvation is nearer now than when we first believed. The night is nearly over, the day is almost here. So let us put aside the deeds of darkness and put on the armor of light. Let us behave decently as in the daytime, not in carousing and drunkenness, not in sexual immorality and debauchery, not in dissension and jealousy. Rather, clothe yourselves with the Lord Jesus Christ, and do not think about how to gratify the desires of the flesh. And the first thing that this section mentions, it says, and do this understanding the present time. The word that they originally used for understanding in this verse actually says to be aware. Be aware of the present time. Be aware of the time that you're standing in. And it seems to me that most of the sermons that I write come out of frustration, and I write them down originally, and it's usually a rant. It's a very long rant, and Derek has to listen to it for days, because I get... I've told him I think that David and I in the Bible would get along, the writer of the Psalms, because David, I've realized, has some anger problems. And I might possibly have some anger problems that I have. And who's laughing at that? But I've oftentimes just gotten very, very angry with where our country is at, and I've asked God, why put me in this time? I wish I could go back 50 years where people were proud to be an American, where they didn't burn American flags in the street, things like that. But what I got, in reading this, it says, be aware of the present time. Be aware of the time that you've been put in. You have been put here for a reason. There is nobody else in the world that has ever been born that can do in this time, at this moment, what you can do. So be aware of that. And so it says, and aware means to be well-informed and concerned. So it's not just to know about something. If you just know about something, but it doesn't matter to you, that's not being aware. And so being spiritually awake means to be aware and to be well-informed and concerned about the people around you, about not just the people sitting here. No offense, I am less concerned with the people that come in here every Wednesday than I am about the people who have never stepped foot in a church, right? Because that's the command, is to go into all the world. And if we keep it in here, we're not going to grow anymore. If you keep seeing the same faces that you've seen every Wednesday and every Sunday, but no one new ever comes in, are we really aware of our present surroundings in the world? Are we really concerned about what is going on? And this is a really difficult thing, because the other Sunday in Merge, we watched a video, and Christine Kane was talking about a campaign that she started, and she talked about how when you hear about tragedy in the world, it is very easy to dismiss it, because oftentimes the news will report tragedy in terms of numbers. And they'll say like 6,000 people a year are sold into slavery, and that sounds like, that's awful, but it doesn't matter to you, right? Because it's just a number. Nobody you know personally has been sold into slavery. Nobody you know personally has been killed by a cop. Nobody you know personally has done these things. And so it's very easy. And we have our own busy lives, and we have all these things that we're trying to focus on every day to be only concerned about what affects us directly, and not to be concerned about a number on a screen, somebody that got hurt here, somebody that got hurt here. Because it seems distant to us. It seems, who cares about somebody in Washington? Like, you're in Georgia, you're all the way across the country, you can't do anything from here. And so, because they seem so distant, it seems inconsequential for your life, which means it doesn't matter. And we may think, oh, that's really sad. You guys hear a story and you think, oh, that's really sad, but then, you probably never think of it again. Like, a story about a baby trapped in a car or something, and you think, oh, that's really sad, but then it leaves your mind because you're scrolling through and something else comes up, right? Who has seen, I'm going to show you guys a picture, and I know a couple of you have because you've posted them, but who's seen this on Instagram or Facebook?
Oh, I have.
How many of you guys have participated in it? This is the Semicolon Project. It's basically you, to raise awareness, they say, for suicidal thoughts. You draw a semicolon on your wrist, and it means it's because a semicolon is not the end of a sentence. It represents a pause in a statement, right? And so they're saying that you write this on your wrist to represent that your life hasn't ended, that you know somebody or you yourself have thought about suicide and decided to keep living. I'm going to be honest with you and tell you that I hate these things. Every one of them that show up on my news feed, whether it's, have you seen those things like one share equals one prayer, write this on your wrist and pass it on. I hate those things. They make me so mad. This one especially makes me mad because I have personally dealt with thoughts of suicide, and my brother has personally attempted suicide on multiple occasions, and not one thing that a person does by drawing a semicolon on their wrist and posting it on Facebook makes a difference to somebody who's contemplating suicide. It doesn't matter. If they see that on Facebook, they're going to keep scrolling. How often do you honestly pray? Do you stop what you're doing right there when you see something like this? Pray right there and continue to pray about it ceaselessly. Almost never, right? You see it and you want to post it because it's the thing on Instagram and it's going to get liked and it's going to make you feel good. And I call it social media activism. And we're in a time now where social media has made it so easy to make it feel like you've done something, like you've done something worthwhile. And I bet you, and I'm not saying the people who have posted that picture, it's not on there, have posted that picture are wrong or that they're bad. I think they don't realize what it is that they're doing. But what I think it does is it gives us a false sense of awareness. I think that it fills our vanity tank up because other people can see that we care about things. Other people can see that we're raising awareness. We can get likes on it, and they know how much we care about the people around us. And doesn't it feel like you've done something when you share something like that and you get other people to pray? But do you stop and pray? Do you stop in that moment? I was telling Derek the other day, and I told the girls this when they were at my house last week, if somebody texts you and says, like, hey, can you pray for me for this? No matter what I'm doing, if somebody texts that to me, I stop what I'm doing right then and pray. because I'm going to forget about it later, because I have a busy life, and because you guys have busy lives. And you're not going to remember to pray in 2-3 days about it, so you stop right then. But most people don't do that. And so, do you draw this on your wrist, post the picture, and scroll on to the next thing on your newsfeed, and wash that off your wrist at the end of the day? Metaphorically speaking, I know most of y'all haven't done that, but that's anything like that. The one share equals a prayer. Share if you care. Share if you love Jesus. I hate those things. Those things make me mad. Those make me so mad.
I can't stand them either.
Social media activism makes it so easy to ignore problems, but at the same time, it makes it easy to seem like you care more than you do. Does that make sense? It makes it easy to pretend that you care while not actually caring, because all you have to do is click a button and it's right there. And you get out and you get this, I call it euphoric, but you get this feeling like you've done everything you could. Like, look how hard you've worked for this cause. But you never actually get informed about the cause. You never actually, what was the ice bucket challenge? How many of you guys know what ALS actually is?
The charity?
No, the ALS is a disease. See, it is a disorder. It's a medical disorder that they're still trying to find a cure for, but it's extremely debilitating, it's fast moving, and it's like horribly painful when you go through it. But see, everybody got into the ALS campaign and the Ice Bucket Challenge, and almost nobody knew the cause behind it, but it made them feel like they were doing something, didn't it? And it got a bunch of likes, and a bunch of people did it. And so I think, in my own opinion, that when we do that, we're denying responsibility for the things that are happening in the world. And we are refusing to acknowledge Noah's reason for building the ark. And it's because of that. It's because of the denial and the refusal to acknowledge that the enemy has been able to come into our home, into our families, into our friendships, into our schools, into our cities, and take things that don't belong to him. It's because we've opened a door, because God has sent us messages, and we would rather click a button than get up and do something. And so, at least sleep is an excuse for being unaware. When you're asleep, you can't help but be unaware. You're unconscious. As Christians, the moment you accept Christ into your life, you no longer have the excuse of being asleep. You're no longer asleep. The Bible says you're a new creation. And so all we have is to accept the fact that we're ignoring the calling deliberately to be a light, all the while we try and convince the world that we serve a loving God, right? But the thing is that there's more to being awake and aware than being a Christian. And if you're a lukewarm Christian, Revelation says that if you're a lukewarm Christian, that when you meet God, that he's going to spit you out of his mouth. And the thing is that lukewarm water only stays lukewarm for about 5 minutes. Have you ever put warm water out, like to do something, and you come back and it's cold? Or you go to take a bath and about 5 minutes into your bath, your water is cold? Lukewarm water doesn't stay warm. It gets cold real fast. The only way to warm water back up is to put it under fire. And so awareness is more than knowing there's a problem, being awake to the problem, seeing it happen, and acknowledging it. It's action. It's a deliberate thing. And I have a little skit that I'm going to show you guys. So.